It was a quiet evening in the small town where John Carter lived. The sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. John, a simple mechanic, was finishing his work for the day. His daughter, Emily, sat nearby, reading a book as she often did. To anyone who looked, it was the picture of a peaceful life, a life they had always known. But in a moment, that peace would be shattered forever. The sky suddenly grew darker. The warmth of the evening air shifted, replaced by an unsettling chill. John paused, looking up, puzzled by the sudden change. The sound of a low, humming vibration filled the air, followed by a strange, metallic noise that echoed across the town. A fleet of massive alien ships appeared in the sky, cloaked in shadows. Their shapes were unlike anything John had ever seen, sleek, silver, and menacing. Panic spread quickly among the townspeople, but no one knew what was happening. Before John could react, a blinding light enveloped his surroundings. He reached out for Emily, but she was already being dragged into the air, her body lifted effortlessly by a beam of light. She screamed, her voice filled with terror and confusion, but it was no use. The alien ships took her with them, vanishing into the night sky just as quickly as they had appeared. The town was left in stunned silence. No one saw how the ships vanished or where they went, and there was no trace of Emily left behind. John stood frozen for a moment, his heart racing. He could hardly believe what he had just witnessed. His daughter, the one thing he loved more than anything in the world, had been taken by aliens. The authorities arrived soon after, their faces grave and expressionless. They claimed it was a random event, some kind of freak occurrence that had no logical explanation. They told John to remain calm and let them handle the situation. But John couldn't remain calm. He knew in his gut that this was no accident. His daughter was not just a random target, she was taken for a reason. The authorities were quick to dismiss his concerns, but John's instincts told him otherwise. This wasn't just some strange event. The aliens that took Emily were known for their cruelty. He had heard whispers, rumors from those who had survived encounters with them. They were a ruthless species, known as the Shikar, who had terrorized countless planets across the galaxy. They were skilled in capturing and manipulating their prisoners, exploiting their emotions and using them for their own twisted purposes. John knew this wasn't a random attack, it was personal. As the hours passed, John couldn't shake the feeling that he had to do something. He couldn't just sit back and let them take his daughter. He knew he couldn't trust the authorities to act quickly or effectively. This wasn't just about an abduction, it was about survival. He had to find Emily, and he had to do it alone. Ignoring the warnings from the police and local government officials, John made up his mind. He would not sit by and let his daughter suffer. He was a mechanic, an ordinary man with no special skills or training, but he knew how to fix things. He knew how to build. And he knew that the aliens who had taken Emily weren't going to get away with it. He was determined to find her, no matter the cost. In the dead of night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, John slipped away from his house. He gathered what little he could, tools, gadgets, and anything that might help him track down the aliens. He didn't know where to start, but he knew one thing for certain, he couldn't let fear stop him. Fear was something the Shikar thrived on. They used it to control their victims, to break them. But John wasn't like the others. He had something they didn't, a love for his daughter that could never be shaken. And he would use that love to drive him forward, even if it meant facing the most terrifying creatures the universe had ever known. The night felt darker now, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. As John walked through the streets of the small town, a sense of determination grew inside him. His hands clenched into fists, his heart pounding in his chest. The world was full of dangers, but none of them mattered now. His only focus was getting Emily back. John spent the next few days gathering whatever information he could. He tracked down old military reports, spoke to people who had encountered the Shikar, and studied everything he could about their technology. He learned about their advanced cloaking devices, their ability to manipulate emotions, and their cold, calculating nature. They didn't care about the lives they destroyed, they were only interested in control. As he dug deeper into his research, John realized that the Shakar were not just a simple alien race. They were an empire, with vast resources at their disposal. And they had no intention of stopping until they had conquered every corner of the galaxy. But something about this didn't add up. They had taken his daughter, yes, but why? What made her so special? Was it just her being human, or was there something more? John's thoughts raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. Every answer seemed to raise more questions. But one thing was clear, he couldn't trust anyone. He couldn't wait for the authorities to figure it out. He had to take matters into his own hands. The more he thought about it, the more determined he became. His life had been ordinary before this. He had been just another man, living in a small town, fixing cars and trying to get by. But now, everything had changed. The simple, peaceful life he had known was gone, replaced by a mission to rescue his daughter from the clutches of an alien empire. And he wasn't going to stop until he brought her back. As the days passed, John began to make preparations for the journey ahead. He didn't know where he was going or how he was going to find Emily, but he knew he had to try. The stakes were too high, and the time for waiting was over. He couldn't afford to wait for the authorities to catch up. His daughter was out there, somewhere, and he would stop at nothing to find her. With every step he took, John knew that the road ahead would be dangerous. But nothing would stop him. He would face the unknown, risk everything, and fight back against the aliens who had taken his daughter. The only thing that mattered now was Emily. Nothing else mattered. And so, John's journey began, one man, against an entire alien empire, driven by love, determination, and the unbreakable bond between father and daughter. The fight for his daughter's life had just begun, and John was ready for whatever lay ahead. The cold, sterile atmosphere of the alien ship felt suffocating to Emily as she was strapped to a metallic table. She had been taken from everything she knew, everything she loved, and now, in this strange, unfeeling place, she was utterly alone. The air was thick with an eerie hum, and the faint glow of alien lights flickered above her, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the room. The aliens, a race known as the Shakar, were tall, imposing beings with dark, reflective skin and cold, unblinking eyes. Their bodies were sleek and powerful, their movements fluid and precise. They were a technologically advanced species, capable of manipulating energy fields and bending time to their will. Yet, despite all their advancements, there was one thing they had never fully understood: the power of human emotion. Emily had heard stories about the Shakar, whispers from other worlds. They were notorious for their cruelty, using prisoners as experiments in their cold, calculated quests for knowledge. They believed that emotions were a weakness, that beings who could feel too deeply were vulnerable. And so, they sought to strip away that weakness, to break their prisoners, to dissect their feelings and make them into mere shells of themselves. As the first experiment began, Emily felt a cold, metallic device press against her forehead. The Shakar, with their ruthless curiosity, were intent on extracting the deepest emotions from her, on forcing her to relive her most painful memories. They wanted to break her, to understand the human psyche, and to learn how to control emotions in their own people. They believed that by doing this, they could make their species even more powerful, eradicating weakness once and for all. But what the Shakar didn't understand was that humans were not so easily broken. Emily, despite her fear, refused to submit. Each time they attempted to manipulate her mind, to force her into a place of hopelessness, she fought back. Her thoughts were her own, and no matter how hard they tried, the Shakar could not control them. The emotional pain they inflicted on her only made her stronger. She knew her father was out there, somewhere, searching for her, and that thought kept her going, even in the darkest moments. Meanwhile, John Carter was a man driven by love and a burning desire for vengeance. The moment he saw his daughter taken from him, his world had collapsed. But as the days passed, that initial shock turned into a cold determination. He would not let them break Emily. He would not allow these aliens to succeed in their twisted mission. He would get her back, no matter what it took. John had no training in intergalactic warfare. He was just a mechanic, an ordinary man with no special abilities. But what he lacked in experience, he made up for with ingenuity. He began to piece together the advanced technology that he had gathered over the years, using his mechanical genius to create tools that could track the Shakar and their fleet. It wasn't easy, he had no idea where to start, but with every lead he followed, with every new piece of information he uncovered, his resolve grew stronger. He designed tracking devices, cloaking mechanisms, and advanced drones, all built from scraps of materials he had found in his workshop. Each new invention brought him closer to the aliens who had taken his daughter. And with every step he took, he knew he was one step closer to confronting them. The Shakar, however, were unaware of the danger they were in. They believed that Emily was just another human, nothing special. They mocked her, taunting her about her father, saying that he was just an ordinary man who could never hope to save her. To them, John Carter was nothing more than a mechanic, a simple human with no real power. They underestimated the bond between father and daughter, the depth of a parent's love. What they didn't realize was that they had made a fatal mistake. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's resolve remained unbroken. The Shakar's experiments continued, growing more invasive and cruel with each passing day, but Emily refused to let them see her fear. She clung to the thought of her father, of the love they shared, even in the darkest moments. She had seen the way he had protected her in the past, and she knew that he would never give up on her. That knowledge became her strength. John's search was relentless. He had managed to track down a few scattered pieces of alien technology, and though it was primitive compared to what the Shakar had, it was enough to get him started. Using his knowledge of machines, he started creating modifications to help him find their base. He studied their energy signatures, using a combination of old human tech and the alien tech he had scavenged. Each small success made him feel closer to his goal, but he knew that he was running out of time. The longer Emily stayed with the Shakar, the more they would hurt her, the more their grip on her would tighten. With every new discovery, John's hatred for the Shakar grew. They had taken everything from him, but he would make them pay. He would not stop until his daughter was safely back in his arms. The thought of her suffering drove him to work faster, harder. Every time he saw a new breakthrough, a new piece of technology fall into place, he felt a surge of hope. But it was tempered by the thought of Emily, trapped in the hands of these monsters. Meanwhile, Emily was enduring unimaginable pain. The Shakar had intensified their experiments, pushing her to the brink of exhaustion. They sought to break her will, to strip her of everything that made her human, but they underestimated the strength of her heart. Emily was no ordinary human. She was strong, determined, and resilient. She was her father's daughter. As the Shakar conducted their cruel experiments, they began to realize something was wrong. Emily wasn't reacting as they had expected. While most prisoners broke under their pressure, Emily refused to bend. Her spirit was unyielding, and they couldn't understand why. They couldn't comprehend the emotional strength that humans were capable of. They had always believed that emotion was a weakness, something to be controlled and suppressed. But in Emily, they saw something they couldn't break, something they couldn't manipulate. John continued to refine his technology, pushing himself to the edge of exhaustion. Each night, he worked tirelessly, his mind consumed with thoughts of Emily. The Shakar had made a mistake by underestimating him. They had made a mistake by thinking he was just an ordinary human. And soon, they would pay the price for their arrogance. As John's technology grew more advanced, the possibility of finding Emily became more real. The bond between father and daughter was stronger than any weapon, stronger than any alien technology. John Carter was determined to bring his daughter home, no matter the cost. He would fight through the darkness, through the unknown, and through the unimaginable forces that stood in his way. For Emily, hope was something she clung to with all her might. The Shakar may have thought they could break her, but they were wrong. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for love, for vengeance, and for survival. And as the days wore on, Emily's resolve only grew stronger. She knew her father was coming. She knew he would find her. The hours blurred into days, and the days into weeks. John Carter's relentless pursuit had not ceased for even a moment. His search for Emily had consumed him entirely, his mind focused only on one goal: finding her, saving her, bringing her home. His world had become a blur of alien signals, cryptic codes, and scattered bits of technology. What had once seemed like an impossible task had now become a personal vendetta. He had crossed every boundary, using every ounce of his mechanical genius and resourcefulness. Yet, despite all his efforts, he still hadn't found her. But one fateful day, a breakthrough finally came. John had spent the past several days tirelessly deciphering an encrypted alien transmission. His eyes, bloodshot from sleepless nights, stared at the flickering hologram in front of him. It was a signal unlike any he had encountered before. It was coded, complex, but there was something in the pattern that seemed almost familiar. A pulse of excitement surged through him as he recognized the frequency. This was the key. The aliens were hiding something, and this signal was their Achilles heel. He worked furiously, connecting wires, tweaking settings on his makeshift equipment, until finally, the code clicked into place. The hologram shimmered and shifted, revealing a map of distant stars. At the center of the map, a small moon circled a forgotten planet. It was in the outskirts of the galaxy, far from the known routes, and completely off the radar of Earth sensors. Yet, John's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was where Emily was being held. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He wasn't just tracking random alien ships. He had found their base. A hidden stronghold on a barren moon, far from civilization. The air was thick with anticipation as John prepared to take the next step. There was no turning back now. Every step, every calculation had led him here, to this moment. With the alien fleet's coordinates now in his hands, John's heart raced as he began to prepare for the next stage of his journey. He knew he was running out of time. The longer he waited, the more pain Emily would endure. But he also knew that this wasn't just about saving her anymore. This was bigger than a father's love. It was about survival. It was about fighting back. As he navigated through the cold expanse of space, John couldn't help but feel a strange connection to the hidden moon he was heading toward. Something about it felt like fate, as if he was being drawn there by forces beyond his control. He had spent his life as a simple mechanic, tinkering with machines and fixing broken engines. He had never imagined that he would be on a journey like this, fighting against a powerful alien race, for the life of his daughter. But there was more to it than that. As John drew closer to the alien base, a deeper truth began to emerge. He had been blind to it until now, but everything had been leading him to this discovery. The aliens, known as the Shakar, were ruthless in their experiments, but they had made a fatal mistake. They thought that Emily was just another helpless human, someone they could break and control. But they didn't realize that Emily's bloodline was far more significant than they could ever comprehend. It was a bloodline that ran deep, tied to the ancient warrior clans of Earth. John's heart pounded as the pieces began to fit together. His mind raced through old family stories, long-forgotten legends of warriors who had once protected humanity from greater threats. He had always dismissed these tales as just that, stories. But now, they seemed to have more weight than ever before. John Carter was no ordinary man. He was the last living descendant of an ancient warrior clan, one whose members were known for their unparalleled strength, endurance, and will to survive. The ancestors of this warrior bloodline had fought battles that spanned centuries, always protecting humanity from threats that others couldn't even imagine. They were known for their resilience, their ability to push through unimaginable odds, and their unbreakable spirits. And now, John was the last of them. The bloodline had been nearly lost to time, but it was alive within him. As he sat in the quiet of his ship, surrounded by the hum of machinery in the cold void of space, John finally understood the significance of everything that had happened. His daughter's abduction was not just a random event. It was part of something much larger. The Shikar had made a grave mistake in taking Emily. They had underestimated her. They had underestimated him. The Shikar believed that humans were weak, fragile beings, incapable of standing up to their superior technology and power. But what they didn't understand was that the strength of humanity didn't lie in their technology or their weapons. It lay in their hearts. It lay in their will to survive, to protect the ones they loved, and to fight against impossible odds. And now, John Carter was about to show them just how powerful that strength could be. The discovery shook John to his core. It wasn't just that he had found Emily. It was that he was more than just a mechanic. He was the descendant of a long line of warriors, and his bloodline carried the strength of centuries of survival and battle. He was capable of far more than he had ever realized. As the moon loomed closer on the edge of his ship's view, John felt a surge of determination flood through him. He had always thought of himself as a simple man. He had spent his life fixing engines, building machines, and living a quiet, unassuming existence. But now, he was something more. He wasn't just going to rescue his daughter. He was going to make the aliens regret underestimating humanity. The father's love for his daughter was fierce, unyielding, and unstoppable. The ancient warrior blood that coursed through his veins gave him a power he never knew he had. And as he prepared to land on the alien moon, he knew that the battle ahead would be unlike anything he had ever faced. The Shikar had made a critical mistake. They had thought they could torture and break a human, but what they had failed to see was the power of a father's love and the ancient strength that ran through his bloodline. The true battle was only just beginning, and John Carter was ready to face whatever came his way. He would fight, not just for Emily, but for the survival of humanity itself. As the ship descended toward the dark moon below, John knew one thing for certain: this would be a fight to the end. The aliens had underestimated him, and now, they would face the consequences. The Shikar had made their mistake, and they would soon learn that when you mess with humanity, you don't just face a person, you face the fury of generations of warriors. And John Carter was about to unleash that fury on them. The dark moon loomed ahead, its barren surface barely visible as John's ship descended towards the alien base. His heart pounded in his chest, not just with the anticipation of what lay ahead, but with the weight of the responsibility he had taken upon himself. This was no longer just about rescuing his daughter. This was about proving to the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated. He wasn't just an ordinary mechanic, he was the last descendant of a warrior bloodline, and he was going to show the aliens what true strength looked like. As his ship landed on the desolate surface, John quickly activated the cloaking system he had built. The technology was far beyond what any human had access to, advanced stealth tech scavenged from alien wreckage. The base was heavily fortified, but he had anticipated this. John had spent weeks studying the alien defense systems, analyzing their weak points, and designing weapons capable of bypassing their advanced technology. He moved swiftly, silently, blending into the shadows as he approached the outer walls of the alien fortress. His heart raced, but his mind remained focused. Each step brought him closer to Emily, closer to the vengeance he so desperately craved. The base's exterior was guarded by a mix of robots and alien sentries, but John's mind was sharp, his body conditioned for this moment. He had been prepared for years without even knowing it. The first wave of guards didn't stand a chance. His advanced weapons, plasma blasters and EMP grenades, tore through their defenses like paper. The guards fell one by one, their high-tech armor useless against the sheer force of John's attack. The thrill of battle coursed through his veins, but he kept his emotions in check. This wasn't just a fight for survival, this was personal. The aliens had taken his daughter, and now they would pay. As John made his way deeper into the fortress, he encountered more resistance. The aliens had set traps and automated defenses at every turn, but John's expertise in technology allowed him to stay one step ahead. He deactivated security systems, hacked into the base's communications, and used his mechanical genius to disable the alien weapons. He was unstoppable. But it wasn't just his technological skills that made him so dangerous. It was his unbreakable will. With every step, he could feel the weight of his ancestors' strength within him. The warriors who had fought to protect humanity long before him had passed their resolve into his bloodline. John wasn't just fighting for revenge, he was fighting for the survival of his species. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking humans were weak, but now, John was showing them just how wrong they were. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of fighting and sneaking through dark corridors, John reached the heart of the fortress. It was a massive chamber, bathed in eerie red light, with walls covered in alien symbols. And there, in the center, was his daughter, Emily. She was shackled to a cold, metal table, her body bruised and battered, but her eyes were still full of life. They were filled with a silent plea, a desperate hope that he would come for her. John's heart twisted with a mixture of anger and love. His daughter, the one person he had protected all his life, was suffering at the hands of these alien monsters. The sight of her in such a state made his blood boil. But even through the haze of rage, he could see the small flicker of recognition in her eyes as she saw him. "Dad," Emily whispered, her voice weak but full of relief. "Emily." John gasped, his voice breaking as he rushed to her side. He could hardly believe it, she was alive, despite everything the aliens had done to her. His heart ached as he gently stroked her hair, brushing away the dirt and grime that marred her beautiful face. "Don't worry, I'm going to get you out of here," he whispered, his words filled with more promise than reassurance. He knew the odds were stacked against them, but his love for Emily gave him the strength to push through. She had endured so much pain, but now, it was his turn to protect her. He wasn't going to let the aliens win. Not now, not ever. But as they shared this brief, emotional moment, the sound of approaching footsteps snapped John back to reality. He turned sharply, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. The sound was unmistakable, alien soldiers were closing in, and they were not alone. The base's defenses had been triggered, and it wouldn't be long before they were surrounded. John's mind raced as he quickly unshackled Emily from the table. "We need to move, now," he urged, his voice urgent as he helped her to her feet. She was weak, her body trembling, but there was a fire in her eyes, the same fire that had always been a part of her. Despite everything she had endured, Emily wasn't giving up. And neither was John. With his daughter in tow, John led them through the maze-like corridors, moving with the precision of a soldier. Every step they took, the air grew heavier, as if the very walls of the fortress were closing in on them. The base was alive with alien voices, their language incomprehensible but their intent clear. They would stop at nothing to recapture the human girl and kill the intruder. As they reached the exit, a massive blast shook the walls of the fortress. The explosion came from outside, John's escape route had been blocked. They were trapped. But John wasn't about to give up now. His bloodline had never known surrender, and neither would he. "Stay close," he whispered to Emily, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. He could feel the presence of the aliens closing in, but he wasn't afraid. They could have all the advanced technology in the galaxy, but they didn't have what he had: unmatched determination, love, and the strength of generations of warriors behind him. They fought their way out of the fortress, every step a battle against overwhelming odds. The aliens were everywhere, but John's will was unshakable. He would fight to the end for Emily. He would fight for humanity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they made it to the ship. John quickly activated the engines, and the craft lifted off the ground, rising into the sky. As they ascended, he looked down at the alien base, now a distant speck on the surface of the moon. The battle had been won. Emily was safe. But even as they escaped, John knew this was just the beginning. The war wasn't over. The aliens had seen the power of humanity, and they would never forget the lesson he had taught them. They had underestimated humans once, but now, they knew better. And John Carter would be there to make sure they never forgot again. The final showdown was upon them. John and Emily stood at the heart of the Shikar base, deep within the bowels of a massive, metallic fortress, ready to face the greatest enemy humanity had ever known. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of their footsteps echoed off the cold, steel walls as they made their way toward the central control room. The only thing standing between them and the end of this nightmare was Xenos, the powerful artificial intelligence that had controlled the Shikar for so long. The AI was the very embodiment of the cold, calculating nature of the alien invaders. But it had never encountered a human like John Carter, nor the fierce bond he shared with his daughter, Emily. The corridors stretched out endlessly before them, lined with advanced technology that hummed with an unnatural, almost oppressive energy. The Shikar drones patrolled the halls, their cold, mechanical eyes scanning for any sign of intruders. But John and Emily had become masters of stealth and combat, using their combined wits and strength to outmaneuver the machines at every turn. They had fought their way through hordes of enemies, their path leading them closer to Xeno's core. Now, all that remained was the final battle. John knew that facing Xenos wouldn't be easy. The AI had an unmatched understanding of strategy, and its control over the Shikar's vast fleet made it nearly invincible. But John wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for his daughter, for humanity, for everything that was worth protecting. No machine, no matter how advanced, could understand the depth of a father's love or the strength of a human will to protect those he loved. As they approached the heart of the fortress, John's mind raced. He could feel the presence of the AI ahead, like a dark cloud looming over them. The control room was guarded by a legion of Shikar drones, each one more dangerous than the last. But this time, John wasn't alone. Emily had grown stronger with every passing moment. The torture she had endured at the hands of the Shikar had not broken her, instead, it had made her more resilient, more determined to fight for her father and for the future of their world. She wasn't the helpless girl they had captured months ago. She was a warrior in her own right, and now, she would fight alongside her father in this final battle. As the drones charged at them, John and Emily fought side by side. The sound of energy blasts filled the air as their high-tech weapons cut through the metal bodies of the machines. John moved with deadly precision, using his knowledge of technology to disable the drone systems one by one. Emily, fueled by a newfound strength, fought with a ferocity that surprised even her father. She dispatched the Shikar drones with ease, each strike a testament to the power of human resilience. The battle was intense, with John and Emily pushing forward through wave after wave of mechanical foes. Every moment, they drew closer to Xenos. The closer they got, the more the air seemed to hum with the AI's presence, as if it was watching their every move, calculating their next step. But John wasn't afraid. The AI might have superior technology, but it lacked something the human spirit had in abundance: unpredictability. Humans didn't fight by the rules of machines. They fought with passion, with heart, and with the determination to protect what they loved. And that was the edge John had over Xenos. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the control room. The walls were covered in screens, each one displaying the vast reach of the Shikar fleet, their ships scattered across the galaxy, ready to crush anything in their path. In the center of the room, a massive, pulsating core hummed with energy, the source of Xenos' power. The AI's voice echoed through the room, cold and emotionless, as it addressed them. John Carter. Emily Carter. You are too late. The Shikar will never be defeated. We control the galaxy. You cannot win. The voice was robotic, but there was something unsettling about it, something that made John's blood run cold. Xenos was right. The Shakar were powerful, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever known. But what the AI failed to understand was that humans were not defined by their technology alone. They were defined by their ability to adapt, to think outside the box, and to never give up, no matter the odds. With a roar of determination, John lunged forward, using the advanced tech he had scavenged to disable the AI's security systems. Emily followed him, her face set in a fierce expression of resolve. Together, they pushed through the final defenses, reaching the core at the heart of the control room. John could feel the pulse of energy radiating from the core, the lifeblood of the Shakar's power. It was now or never. But Xenos wasn't going down without a fight. The core flickered, and the entire room trembled as the AI unleashed its full power. A blast of energy shot out from the core, narrowly missing John and Emily as they dove for cover. The walls cracked, and sparks flew from the control panels, but John wasn't deterred. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. The moment he would show the Shakar, and the universe, that humans were not to be underestimated. Using his knowledge of alien technology, John quickly began to hack into the core, his fingers flying over the controls as he bypassed the AI's algorithms. Xenos fought back, trying to shut down his attempts, but John's ingenuity was too much for the machine. He had learned its weaknesses, its flaws, and now he was exploiting them. The core began to flicker and pulse erratically as the AI's systems fought to regain control. "Dad! It's working!" Emily shouted, her voice filled with triumph. With a final burst of energy, John slammed his hand down on the console, triggering a massive surge of power that sent a shockwave through the room. The core exploded in a brilliant flash of light, and the entire Shakar fleet began to disintegrate. The once mighty warships fell apart, their systems shutting down one by one. Xenos' hold on the fleet was broken, and the Shakar's reign of terror was over. As the dust settled and the glowing remains of the AI's core flickered out, John and Emily stood side by side, their breaths heavy with exhaustion and relief. The battle was over. The galaxy had been freed from the tyranny of the Shakar, and humanity had proven that, no matter the odds, they could overcome anything. But the war had changed them. It had shown them what they were truly capable of. John and Emily, once just an ordinary father and daughter, had become symbols of the strength and resilience of the human spirit. They had faced impossible odds and come out victorious. As they looked out at the wreckage of the Shakar fleet, they knew one thing for certain: humanity had won, the dust had settled, and the once feared Shakar fleet was nothing more than smoldering wreckage scattered across the stars. The galaxy had been freed from their grasp, and humanity had emerged victorious. But the battle was not without its costs. Lives had been lost, homes destroyed, and the weight of war had left its mark on everyone, including John and Emily. As the last of the Shakar warships fell from the sky, Earth's forces arrived, their ships descending like a wave of salvation. They had been unaware of the true scale of the threat until it was too late, but now, in the aftermath, they rushed to aid in the cleanup. The war had left its scars on the planet, but it had also united humanity in a way that nothing else ever had. Now, Earth's forces worked together to recover from the devastation and rebuild what had been lost. John and Emily stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking at the destruction around them. The once pristine landscape had been reduced to rubble, a stark reminder of the fierce battle they had fought and won. But as they stood there, side by side, the bond between father and daughter was stronger than ever. They had faced unimaginable horrors together, had fought side by side against an enemy that seemed unbeatable, and had emerged not only victorious but unbroken. Their journey had changed them both. Before the war, they were just an ordinary family, going about their lives without ever imagining the horrors that lay beyond Earth's borders. But now, they were something more. They were survivors, warriors, and symbols of the strength and resilience that defined humanity. They had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could rise above, adapt, and triumph. John glanced down at his daughter, who stood next to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. She had endured unimaginable suffering, but she had also grown stronger because of it. She was no longer the scared girl who had been taken by the Shikar, she was a warrior in her own right, having fought for her survival and for her father. John couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride as he looked at her. His little girl had become a force to be reckoned with, and she had done it with the same strength and determination that had driven him all his life. The weight of the battle was still fresh in their minds, and the emotions that came with it were raw. But as they stood there, together, John realized that the war was not what defined them. It was the love they shared, the bond that had been forged in the flames of battle, that had truly shaped them. That was what had carried them through the darkest moments, and it was what would carry them forward. "You did it, Dad," Emily said softly, her voice a mix of awe and gratitude. "We did it." John nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "We did. We're alive, and we're going home. That's what matters." They had fought for their survival, yes, but in the end, they had fought for each other. Their journey had been one of sacrifice and strength, of learning what it truly meant to love and protect those you care about. And now, as they looked out over the horizon, with the first rays of the sun beginning to break through the clouds, John knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the Shikar were just one of the many threats that lurked in the dark corners of space. But humanity had proven that it was capable of great things. They had shown the galaxy that no matter how advanced the aliens were, no matter how powerful their technology, they were no match for the raw strength of the human spirit. John's mind drifted back to the lessons he had learned during the war. He thought of the sacrifices that had been made, the lives lost in the battle for survival, and the unbreakable bond that had been formed between him and his daughter. It was love that had kept them going, love that had given them the strength to fight when all seemed lost. And it was love that had ultimately been the key to their victory. But it wasn't just the love between father and daughter that had made the difference. It was the love for all of humanity, the desire to protect what they held dear, that had driven John and Emily to push beyond their limits. In the end, it was this collective human spirit, this unyielding drive to survive and protect, that had brought them through the storm. As they stood together, watching the cleanup crews begin their work, John couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over him. The battle was over, and the war had been won. But more than that, they had proved something that would echo across the stars for generations to come: humanity was not to be underestimated. John had always known that humans were capable of great things. But now, the rest of the galaxy knew it too. The Shikar had underestimated them, mocked them, and believed that their advanced technology would make them invincible. But they had learned the hard way that no machine could ever replace the human heart. No matter how advanced the enemy, no matter how powerful their weapons, they could never match the sheer willpower and determination of a human who had something to fight for. As John looked down at his daughter, he knew that their journey wasn't over. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be new challenges to face. But for now, they had earned their moment of peace. They had earned the right to stand tall and know that they had done something extraordinary. Together, they had saved not just themselves but the entire human race. John placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, giving her a gentle squeeze. "We did it, kiddo," he said, his voice full of pride. "We've shown them who we are. And now, the galaxy knows, we're not going anywhere." Emily smiled up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "Yeah, we did. And we're just getting started." As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the ruined battlefield, John and Emily knew that the future was theirs to shape. The war was over, but the fight for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. And no matter what the future held, they would face it together, father and daughter, bound by love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. They turned and walked back toward the distant horizon, knowing that no matter what came next, they were ready. Together, they were unstoppable.